The Blessing Protocol. Chapter 1. The Ante-Chamber. By Never Be Named. Helen stood in the ante-chamber of the sanctuary and adjusted her collar in the mirror. The gesture was precise, unhurried, the same economy she brought to calibrating an instrument before a run. The clinical interior voice she had never been able to silence noted, with its usual dispassion, that she was not afraid. She inventoried her reflection the way she inventoried a hardware array. Close-cropped hair, titanium frames, the high collar of the wool sweater that hid the sharpness of her collarbones. Everything was present. Everything was in order. She had lost more weight since October. The sweater covered it adequately. Her left hand had developed a fine tremor over the past 3 months. She watched it now in the glass, holding it still by an act of quiet attention, the way she might hold a measurement steady against ambient vibration. When it stilled, she put it in her pocket. The antechamber smelled of cleanroom filtration and something older beneath it, a faint mineral tang from the basalt walls that the HVAC could never quite scrub out. The ventilation system overhead ran at the same frequency as the systems on her research floor 30 stories below. She had worked in this building for 19 years. The sound was as familiar as her own breathing, and she found, to no great surprise, that this familiarity was a comfort rather than a diminishment. The tower did not become less itself because she was about to die in it. She thought of her grandmother Margaret going up the steps in a red scarf without looking back. Helen had been 9, standing in the crowd with her father's hand around hers, and she had watched that straight back until it passed through the upper door and was gone. For 30 years, she had understood that composure as courage. Standing here now, she understood it differently. It had not been courage. It had been recognition, the particular stillness of a person who had located themselves exactly, who knew what they were for and found no remainder. Helen straightened her collar one final time and recognized the same thing in her own reflection. A ritual attendant came in with a tablet, young and careful in the way that junior lab staff were careful around anyone above a certain clearance. He confirmed her name, her credential number, her formal designation under the Blessing Protocol.
Helen Margaret Ashford, Fellow Grade 6. Volunteer status confirmed under the autumn filing.
He entered it without looking up. She did not look away from the mirror. He noted something in the log before he left, and she suspected, without particular interest, that he had written something about her composure. Helen remained at the mirror, her right hand still, her left hand in her pocket, already composing in her mind the final calibration notes she intended to file before the ceremony began. Greaves entered without knocking, which was his habit and his right. He moved through the antechamber with the unhurried authority of a man who had done this many times and found each occasion worthy of the same care, the measured pace, the hands clasped at the small of his back, the slight bow of his head as he crossed the threshold. He was 71 and showed it only in the careful placement of each step.
Helen.
He said her name the way he said most things, as a complete sentence.
You are the finest scientist this island has produced in a generation. I want you to know that I mean that without qualification, and that what you are doing honors the institution and everyone in it.
She turned from the mirror. His voice carried no flattery. She had heard flattery from enough committee chairs and prize committees to know the register. This was something else. This was the genuine pride of a man who believed the covenant was real, who had ordered his entire life around its truth, and who saw in her sacrifice a confirmation of everything he held to be sacred. The belief was his. She accepted the statement that contained it.
Good work.
Greaves held her gaze for a moment, then nodded once. He had known her for 20 years. He took it for what it was. He walked her through the sequence then, standing at the center of the room with the posture of a man delivering a lecture he had given before but still considered worth giving well. The sensor array calibration window opened at the 54th minute of the final hour. The neural capture protocol initialized on the attending technician's confirmation and ran without further input. The subject was not required to do anything except remain still. He described the exact order of events from the moment she crossed the sanctuary threshold to the moment the protocol completed, and she listened with the attention she brought to technical briefings, mapping each step against what she already knew from her own hardware work on neural interface arrays. The sequence was elegant. Whoever had designed it understood the cascade dynamics of biological shutdown.
The array itself.
He seemed to be deciding how much to say.
It was redesigned 6 years ago. The specifications came from published work on neural interface miniaturization. Your work, as it happens. The third Ashford Prize paper.
Helen looked at him.
You weren't informed at the time. The application was within the lab's licensing framework. I should have told you.
She had not known. She filed the information now, placing it beside everything else she knew about the sanctuary's hardware. The transmission profiles she had flagged and set aside, the calibration tolerances that matched her own bench specifications too closely to be coincidence, the schematic she had reconstructed from the array's maintenance logs 3 months ago, and then locked in an encrypted partition, because she had not yet decided what to do with it. The sanctuary ran on her own work. She had built the instrument that would capture her.
I understand.
Greaves accepted this with the same nod he had given before. He asked whether she had questions about the sequence. She told him she did not. He told her the chaplain would come by in the evening, that the formal witness list had been filed, that her family had been notified of the date. She said she knew. He said of course she did, and there was no condescension in it, only an old man's acknowledgement that she managed her affairs with more precision than anyone else he had ever administered. He left the way he had entered, quiet and deliberate, and the door closed behind him with the soft pressure seal click of a well-engineered room. Helen stood alone. The ventilation hum settled back into the space his presence had displaced, a low, steady frequency she had stopped hearing years ago and now heard clearly. The walls carried a faint warmth from the geothermal system running through the tower's infrastructure, the same system that had been redesigned in the Blessing following her grandmother's sacrifice 30 years ago, the same warmth that had been in the walls of every building on the island since she was 9 years old. The warmth in the walls was the same warmth her grandmother's blessing had made possible 30 years ago, and Helen found this neither ironic nor comforting, only true. Her father arrived first, the way he always did, holding his coat with both hands as though he had not quite decided whether to stay. Her mother came in behind him carrying a thermos, the kind she had owned for 20 years, dented at the base from a camping trip Helen could still place precisely on a map. Margaret set the thermos on the small side table beside the bench. She did not say anything about the tea itself. She said the corridor was cold, and she had thought Helen might want something warm. Helen took the cup her mother poured and wrapped both hands around it. The ceramic was the right temperature. She noted this with the same quiet precision she brought to everything, and said nothing. Robert stood near the door. He spoke about the geothermal station's new output figures, which he had read in the morning bulletin. The numbers were good, he said, better than the quarterly projection. He did not say he was proud of her. he never had in so many words. He was a man who expressed that kind of feeling by placing himself in the proximity of things connected to its source, and Helen had understood this about him for long enough that she no longer waited for anything different. Her mother reached out and straightened the collar of Helen's sweater. It was a brief adjustment, precise as a correction, and it could have been accidental. Helen did not step back. She told them what the sequence would involve. Approximately 4 hours, the sensor array calibration already complete, the pre-sequence checklist signed off that morning. She gave them the technical outline in the order she would have presented it to a lab colleague, with the same measured delivery. It was what she had always done when she could not find another way to say something. Her father nodded at the geothermal figure again. Her mother listened with her hands folded. When the family hour was called to a close by a soft tone from the corridor panel, Margaret picked up the thermos. She looked at Helen once, without speaking, and then said only that she would leave the light on. It was exactly what she had said every night of Helen's childhood, standing in the doorway of her room after lights out, and Robert nodded at something on the floor. Helen watched them go down the corridor and kept her left hand around the ceramic cup until the warmth was gone. The pre-ritual physician arrived last. He was a precise man with a narrow tablet and the unhurried efficiency of someone who had administered this particular checklist many times, and he treated Helen with the specific courtesy of a professional who respected his subject enough not to perform solemnity at her. He worked through the protocol in order. Glioblastoma staging, confirmed, consistent with prior imaging. Medication schedule. She recited it without reference to notes, and he marked each item without comment. Contraindications for the neural capture array, none. Helen answered each question accurately and without elaboration, because she had prepared for this the way she prepared for any technical review, completely, in advance, so that the review itself required nothing of her. The consent question came third from last. He asked, as protocol required, whether she confirmed her willingness freely and without coercion.
Yes.
The word was small, and the room absorbed it quietly, but it landed with the weight of the 30 years that had made it inevitable. The grandmother in the red scarf, the prize citations with her name above the institution's seal, the notebooks filled in dialect, the diagnosis typed in the clean, impersonal font of the oncology department. Yes. It was the only answer she had ever been building toward. They spoke briefly about the tumor's progression. She noted that the right temporal lobe involvement would affect language before motor function. He agreed this was consistent with the imaging. There was a small pause in which neither of them remarked on the particular irony of a scientist losing her words before her hands, and Helen was grateful for that. She did not need his sympathy noted aloud any more than she needed her own. The pre-ritual physician closed his tablet, mentioned almost as an afterthought that her latest scan showed an atypical electromagnetic signature in the tumor bed, interesting but not clinically significant, and Helen, who had spent 30 years dismissing instrument noise as instrument noise, filed the detail exactly where she filed everything she did not yet need, in the back of her mind, behind everything else.